This is the B&O Sports Show with your hosts, Tanner Ballard and Garrett Otto.
Hello, and welcome back to the B&O Sports Show. As always, I'm Garrett Otto, alongside Tanner Ballard. Tanner, how you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. Back into second semester of school here. I'm excited for it. Already
That's
second
right.
semester senior. It's crazy.
Back on that grind.
Man, but you know what is actually crazier is we're already into the conference championship week of the football season. It feels like school started really recently, but it also feels like that NFL season started really recently, which would make sense because they start around the same time.
That is true. Yeah, crazy how time flies, right? Time flies when you're having fun, I guess, or when you're watching football.
Hey, yeah, football is fun. And we had a fun divisional week. Man, a lot went on. We had some crazy games. Both our teams played. Both of our teams lost. So it wasn't the greatest week for us, but for a football fan, it was a pretty good week of football. I say we start off with the Chiefs and the Patriots. One heck of a game, but Tom Brady comes out on top again, Tanner. Always comes out on top.
It seems like it. Seems like he always comes out on top. Yeah, that was the first game of the weekend on Saturday, and it was an interesting game. I was looking back, I was like, man, I don't really remember what happened in this game, and I don't know if that was because I was too amped for the Packers game that I really didn't care about this game, but I mean, it still turned into a good game. Obviously, the Patriots came out on top with the final score of 27-20. It was kind of a back and forth game, you know. The Patriots got some of their weapons back in the receiving core with Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski, so Tom Brady had some targets to hit. And, they came out, they scored in the first quarter, they scored a touchdown in the first quarter, touchdown in the second quarter, touchdown in the third quarter. So they kept it consistent, for 3 quarters, and basically they were just too much defensively for the Chiefs because the Chiefs weren't able to score any touchdowns in the first half, and then finally the Chiefs started to get it going in the second half, but, ultimately weren't able to come out on top. You probably remember this better than I do, Garrett, but the last drive, that was pretty awful clock management from the Chiefs, right? Because they were trying to come back, weren't they?
Yeah, they were really making an attempt at a comeback, and it was really the drive where they scored to bring it within one score. They scored to make it 20-27 as the final score was. They just seemed to leave some time off the clock, and which it would have given them a better chance to possibly, if they wanted to, kick it deep and trust their defense to get a stop, or even just with an onside kick, if the Patriots recovered, maybe to be able, again, to get that defensive stop and get a chance to get the ball back and try and come back and tie up the game. But it ended up that the clock was down to a minute, I believe, maybe just over 1 minute, and they had to go for the onside kick, and ends up actually that Rob Gronkowski, of all people, recovered that one and kind of sealed the win for the Patriots.
Yep.
People have always given Andy Reid a hard time about his clock management, and this doesn't help. Man, I was on Twitter. I was on Twitter, and I mean just social media in general, and everyone was ripping Andy Reid for his clock management. But I mean, you got to give. There's a point to be made there. They might have had a better chance to come back and try and tie up this game and win it in overtime if that clock management had been better, but. I mean, it ultimately comes down to just New England being the better team. It's hard to go into Foxborough and win a game, especially with Gronkowski and Edelman being back. Gronkowski had 2 touchdowns, and then Brady actually ran one in, which is amazing in itself. Brady ran in for a touchdown. I don't know how many times that's happened in history, but probably not very often.
I don't know. I do remember that play, and I think I was a little upset at the Chiefs' defense.
Yeah.
But that's just personal bias. Just a little bit of personal bias, you know.
I mean, Brady's one of the best at the quarterback sneak, but you can't let that guy into your own ends. I mean, I'd be ashamed. I'd be ashamed if I was the Chiefs. Ultimately, they go home and the Patriots move on. This is this is going to be the Patriots' 5th straight AFC Championship game, which is incredible, but it also speaks to Bill Belichick, I think, most. The whole, I guess, management and coaching staff there. I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
5 in a row, Tanner?
Well, on that note, 5 in a row, you know, what the Patriots have won, one Super Bowl out of those past 5, which is, you know, it's a good, you know, they've got that Super Bowl win, but you know, what do you think? What does that say? Does that say more about the Patriots, or does it say more about the AFC that they've been able to get in 5 times in a row? That's what I'm kind of wondering, you know?
Well, I think you do have to give the Patriots credit. Not everyone's a big fan of them, and I'm not a huge fan of them either. But I think there's a lot of talent in the AFC. I believe the NFC is the much better conference, but I do believe there are good teams out there in the AFC. I just think that the Patriots are a step ahead of them and have been a step ahead of them for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
They always get there. It seems like Tom Brady will be playing in his 10th AFC Championship game, which we'll get to a little later. I would say it's more the Patriots than the AFC teams, because I just believe that the Patriots are just like one step ahead of those other teams, and that's not because those teams are bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, when I bring up that question, I don't discredit the Patriots for getting there 5 times in a row. Obviously, that means that you have to be a good team to be able to do that. But I think it does beg a little bit of a question as to, you know, when you have a team that's now granted 2 teams do get, you know, to the AFC Championship. But when it's consistently one team for the past 5 seasons, you start to wonder, you know, are these, and especially take a look at the fact that they've only won 1 Super Bowl out of 5 times, which, you know, if you're getting to the AFC Championship 5 times in a row, but only producing 1 Super Bowl out of those 5 times, I start to, you know, question just a little bit, whether or not they have sufficient competition in the AFC, which, like Garrett said, I think they do. They have some competition, but like he said, I think they're just a step above. So, yes, the Patriots are moving on after beating the Chiefs. They're heading to the AFC Championship on Sunday. So, moving on here, the final game of the Saturday day of football, I guess. The last game of the day was the infamous, or very famous, that doesn't really make sense. If you're a Packers fan, you hated it. If you're a Cardinals fan, you loved it. The Packers and the Cardinals played. What an incredible game. I mean, yes, I'm a Packers fan, and you know it was it was pretty upsetting, but it was an incredible game of football. I mean, you know, when it was just like it was just nonstop action, back and forth, and you know the Packers, they didn't get off to a very good start. They started to get it rolling. It was really helpful that Eddie Lacy started to produce a little bit in the second half. You know, he had one huge run where I don't know if you saw this one, Garrett, when he had this huge run that he broke. The first one he broke for, I don't know, a good chunk of yards. It was at least a first down, maybe 15 yards. And the next one he broke for, I don't know, 60 yards probably.
61-yarder.
61-yard run. And I don't know if you saw this, but I mean, people always want to bring up that weight issue that he may or may not have had. You know, the round running back as they call him. He was definitely gone if he had speed, but basically he was too slow, and the Cardinals defense caught up to him.
I don't know if you heard, Mike McCarthy came out and said that Lacy can't play at the weight he was at this season. I thought that was interesting that his coach was kind of willing to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's fair from McCarthy. You gotta be real here with your running backs, and McCarthy's been in the game long enough, and he understands that if your running back is at the weight that Lacy was at, he's not going to be able to do what the team needs him to do, and that's run the ball consistently, which is something that Green Bay has fair to say lacked in the past couple of years. So yeah, he definitely is going to have to slim up. Hopefully get a little bit quicker than he was this year. That would be nice. But so we'll see what he comes back, how he comes back next year. He's still dangerous, man. He's still dangerous. I love Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, I definitely think he has the talent. I just wanted to mention he had 12 carries for 89 yards, which if you look at the average is 7.4, and you think that's great. But if you take away the 61-yarder, that gives him 11 carries for 28 yards.
Yeah, that's quite an outlier. Isn't it?
Not as impressive 11 for 28 as 12 for 89 is.
So, moving on with that game, it was back and forth. The Cardinals seemed to have it in lockdown as the Packers tried to climb their way back into it. The Cardinals were up by 7 with what was it? Basically the Packers got the ball back, right? How about that? Okay, Garrett, if we go back here, I don't know if you remember this decision by Bruce Arians, but he decided when the Cardinals had the ball late in the fourth quarter, they had the ball, they could have just milked the clock by running it or tried to milk the clock by running the ball, and instead they chose to throw it, and it ended up going out of bounds, incomplete. They were trying to throw to Fitzgerald. That cost him, I think that was a second down, and it cost him. Not only did it cost him on the clock, because the clock stops an incomplete pass, but it also cost him a down. And ultimately, I think that decision was what gave Rodgers the ball back. So Bruce Arians is a brilliant coach, and obviously the play calls that he makes, usually he's just on top and just a fantastic play caller. But that one, not the best call, I don't think.
Yeah, it was questionable.
But
I mean,
yeah.
He knows his offense better than us, but you would think in that situation he runs the ball every time, especially with David Johnson.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's a tough situation. You would not want to give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers knowing what he can do. So that was definitely a peculiar decision. Luckily, he's lucky it didn't come back to bite him, though. Well, not in the end.
Well, right. In a sense, it did come back to bite him because Rodgers pulled off Hail Mary 2.0. Unbelievable throw. I mean, I heard. I can't remember if it was Chris Collinsworth, who was on the commentary for that game, but the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary, with time expiring in the fourth quarter, throws it up there to Jeff Janis in the end zone, has to be one of the greatest throws ever. I mean, honestly, the absolute arm strength, and mind you, he was on the run. He was moving, didn't have time to just stand there and load it up. He was moving, and he just absolutely rocketed that thing.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say, if you look at the way he was moving and throwing the ball, almost always when that ball comes out, it seems like it goes, 5-10 yards out of bounds, way past the sideline, because it's so hard to turn your body and still get that ball down there. But I also want to point out, credit to Janis. I mean, he goes up there and makes a spectacular catch over 2 defenders.
Unbelievable catch.
And he comes down. I don't know how hard he hit his head or whatever. In the replays, it looks like he is not completely sure how into it he
Yeah,
is.
he came down hard.
He came down hard, and he took a blow. And I think his instincts kind of just took over to hold on to that ball and not let it basically roll off of him and onto the ground. I mean,
Right.
what a play. You want to talk about the throw. That's an amazing play overall.
Yes. Yeah, unbelievable. So that made it what? 19-20. So then, and of course, well, we'll get to that in a second. The Packers tied it up, 20-20, right? Then comes the infamous coin flip, or Flipgate as it's being called
Coin
now.
flip or not.
Speaking
no
of,
flip? Or flip, no flip.
I don't even. Speaking of, the referee, his name is Clete Blakeman. He is going to be the referee to officiate Super Bowl 50. The same guy who couldn't flip a coin. So, good job, NFL. Hopefully he is able to practice his flipping
He
motion.
may not be able to flip a coin, but he can call a holding call, okay?
Oh, he must be. Yeah, he can spot those intentional groundings within a mile. Unbelievable. So that was that was kind of a, I don't really know, because basically here's what happened afterwards. So basically the coin doesn't flip, right? Okay, the referee is showing heads when he has the coin, and Aaron Rodgers calls tails. He flips the coin, or he throws the coin up in the air, and it stays on heads, does not flip, hits the ground. All the Packers freak out. They're like, man, it didn't flip, And so he picks it back up, and what he does is he turns it over so that tails is facing up. Now, and Aaron Rodgers said after the game, he said that, the referee flipped the coin so that tails was facing up, and Rodgers thinks that he should have had an opportunity to recall the flip. But I think basically Rodgers, his strategy is, call the side that isn't facing up. I mean, theoretically, theoretically, a coin, it shouldn't matter which side is facing up because it should be a 50-50 side, or 50-50 chance, rather, no matter what. But, I don't know, maybe there might be some crazy statistic that points out, that there's like a really, really, really slim chance more that if you call the side that isn't facing up that it'll go, or maybe it's just all mind games and Rodgers is just superstitious in the fact that he calls the side that isn't facing up. So regardless, the Cardinals won the coin toss. What really would have been controversial is that the Packers won the coin toss. I mean, can you imagine just the absolute chaos that would have ensued?
Yeah. Man, when we started this podcast, never in my mind did I think that a coin flip was going to be talked about for this long. This has got to be. I'm not positive in this, but I'm pretty confident. This has got to be the most talked about coin flip in NFL history.
It might be the most talked about coin flip in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Has a coin flip ever mattered so much?
Man, I don't know. It redefines every time I flip a coin now. It flashes me back to this game.
You're thinking about it?
Yeah.
I just don't. How can you flip a coin and it not flip? Did he? Because when you flip a coin, you have to do the little thumb flick, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get it to flip. So unless he just didn't flick his thumb and just tossed it up in the air with his hand all stiff.
I mean, to his credit, that's not just your average size quarter. Those coins are much bigger.
It's got a little bit of weight to it. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have to have the coin. I'd have to have an official NFL coin, but I feel like it just doesn't sit on your. Because when I flip a coin, I've got the quarter resting partially on my thumb, but mostly on my index finger, and I just make that flick motion. But with a coin that big, you may not be able to balance it perfectly. So if you have to get your,
Are you thinking two hands?
Or if you have to get your
two hands
middle
to
finger
flip
in
it
there
up?
to support it, things get complicated here when you throw in an NFL coin.
Yeah,
and don't even get me started on the emblems and the logos that they have on there for each game.
Yeah, it can get crazy.
There's plenty.
How about the conspiracy? How about the conspiracy theory that the NFL weighted the tails side. When the Packers called tails, the referee slipped out a weighted tails side.
Hey.
So that the coin always landed on heads.
With Roger Goodell making $30 million a year, man, he's got power.
He does have a lot of power.
And the fact that he's the
you know
NFL
what?
commissioner also gives him power, but
True. Yeah, for the sake of the NFL, I hope that conspiracy theory stays a conspiracy theory.
I don't know, Tanner. Have we spent enough time on this coin flip? Should we actually talk about the end of the game?
I'm not sure if we spent enough time on the coin flip. We may have to come back to it next week because it might still be relevant next week.
I agree. I'm going to put that in the schedule right now for next week.
All right, go ahead. Type that in.
I'm going to slot us like 5 minutes worth of time for it.
All right, fair enough. Well, while Garrett slots that in, I'll just basically update you on what happened at the end of the game. After the Cardinals won the coin toss, the Packers blew it. Their defense let Larry Fitzgerald run.
That was so simple. That was very precise and concise and precise.
I mean, it's true. I was extremely upset. I'll be the first one to tell you that I was absolutely upset. And I was more upset. I was upset about the NFL, not at the coin toss, but at the rules. The NFL overtime rules. I was furious because and I'm still upset about that. But when you look back at it, you know, you hear the phrase defense wins championships, which is true. And the Packers defense did not win them anything. So I just, from what I can recall from that play, it was like basically everybody gets dumped deep, and then Larry Fitzgerald, the best receiver on the field, mind you, Larry Fitzgerald runs like an in route and gets left all alone, literally all alone.
He had like
in the middle of the
it
field.
It seems like he had like 10 yards
and he
in
just
every
like
direction.
takes off. Yeah, takes off and nobody can catch him. Finally, Demarius Randall caught him, I think it was, and then they do a little dang shovel play to Larry Fitzgerald just to rub it in our faces a little bit more. Dang it, Bruce Arians. So
they couldn't just run it on you. They couldn't pass it to like a tight end or anyone.
No, it had to be in the hands of Larry Fitzgerald. It could not be anyone else. The misery. Well, so anyways, after that was all said and done,
hey,
shout out to Larry Fitzgerald for being a super classy guy.
Yeah.
In the post game interview, I don't know if you saw this, Garrett, but he sent his best wishes to Mort from ESPN. Mortensen, who's dealing with cancer. And, I mean, as much as I didn't like Larry Fitzgerald on the field, you can't deny that he's one of the classiest, if not the classiest player in all football.
I think he's got to be the top. He's constantly, I mean, I was watching an interview with Richard Sherman, and Richard Sherman had a reputation as being, like, one of the biggest trash talkers in the league. And they, like, asked him who you can't trash talk, and he was like, oh, like Larry Fitzgerald, like he's the nicest guy. Or like, I believe during a Seattle-Arizona game, Fitzgerald took a hit up high. Maybe it wasn't Seattle, but he took a hit up high. It was definitely helmet to helmet. There was a penalty called. And Fitzgerald pops right up. He's got a smile on his face. He walks up to the defender that hit him, and he gives him a little pat on the helmet. And I'm just sitting here like, this guy he just took a tough shot to the head, and his immediate reaction is to get up and smile and give this guy a pat on the helmet like he's his best friend.
Either he's the happiest guy ever in that play, or he's like subconsciously unconscious.
Yeah, and he
like doesn't know where he is, and
his instincts
he's
just
like
take over.
smiling.
His Larry Fitzgerald self is like, all right, smile, give him a pat. Okay,
smile
you're good.
and pat the helmet and walk off. We'll see you in the hospital.
Man, the last thing I want to say about this game, before I'll let you go on with it, is I know it was tough to lose like that, but just remember, you could have been beaten on an 80-yard touchdown pass from Tim Tebow. So it happened before.
Oh,
that's the worst ending. You make it to overtime, and Tim Tebow he throws like an 8-yard pass, but.
Yes, and Demaryius Thomas outruns the entire defense. Yeah. For this, what was that? The Steelers? Yeah, that was the Steelers.
Yeah, could always be worse.
I watched that the other day, and there was some serious nostalgia there because Hines Ward was on the bench, and I started to tear up, and then I saw Troy Polamalu, and his hair made me sad. Man. Well, so anyways, as if I wanted to talk about this game anymore, the only thing that I want to mention is the NFL overtime rules. I just want to talk a little bit about this, Garrett. I was in my rage ranting to you about the NFL overtime rules. I still don't think that I don't know if fair is the right word, but I still don't think that the overtime rules that the NFL has in place proves who the better team is. That's just my opinion. Because like what happened in the Packers game, Packers defense had a decent game. Obviously, they screwed up on that last play, but they didn't have a terrible game. So you could have an all-star, basically you could have a team with an all-star defense that shuts down the other team. You know, basically you could have two defensive teams even. Two solid defensive teams that shut down each other, tie the game up, go into overtime, and one defensive team makes a mistake. Just one little mistake, and it costs them the game. That doesn't seem fair to me. And when you look back at what Aaron Rodgers did with that Hail Mary, throwing the ball down to Jeff Janis, unbelievable play. And Rodgers said it best, and he said it in the press conference afterward. He said, "I don't think it's fair, or it doesn't seem fair to me that our offense doesn't get to touch the ball in the overtime session." I personally think that, and Garrett, I think you have something else. Or you had another way of looking at it, but truly the only way, in my opinion, to prove which team is the better team in overtime is to basically have another quarter of football. Whoever wins, I take that back. That wasn't correctly said. Basically, the college overtime rules, except you have to start each drive with a kickoff. Basically, just having another game, but each team is guaranteed a possession, like college, until one team scores and the other team doesn't. That is truly, in my opinion, the only way that it's fair. Now, and I know there's a lot of like football purists that say that we should just keep the overtime rules as they are now because like I said, defense wins championships. But I don't know, what are your thoughts here, Garrett?
I definitely agree. I think both teams need a chance, both offenses need a chance to get the ball, have a chance to score. Ultimately, it comes down to timing. It's kind of hard to say that we should just cut the game clock and just let the teams play out until one scores and the other doesn't, because that's a lot of time. I could definitely see.
But at the same time, doesn't that kind of prove the conditioning of your team? Doesn't it?
That definitely appeals to me. I almost would like to set a time and time limit and say both teams have to be able to have a full possession and be able to score. But then it's kind of like, well, if that time runs out, then you just have to start over. So almost that, like you said, like the college rules, where there's no clock and each team gets a chance to score, that almost makes most sense to me. Because I definitely understand your frustration that your team plays well enough the whole game to push it to overtime, and then one little slip up and Larry Fitzgerald finds a seam, and then, practically the game's over.
Yeah, game over.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Right. I doubt the NFL will look at it, but I think it's something they might want to address. So. Yeah.
I still think, my conclusion on this is that the coin toss, whether it's flipped correctly or not, still has too much of an impact on the outcome of the game. Not saying that the coin toss decides the winner of the game, but I'm sure, statistically, if you look at the overtime games that have existed in the NFL where this rule is in place, whichever team wins the coin toss has the much more chance of winning the game. Even with their little adjusted, have to win on a, have to score a touchdown to get it over in the first drive thing that they've implemented. So, anyways, we'll leave that game where it is, in the grave. At least the Packers are in the grave. The Cardinals are moving on. They will play the Carolina Panthers. Didn't mean to spoil that one, but I know Garrett has just a little bit to say about this game. This was the first game on Sunday, the other NFC game. Garrett, the Panthers got off to a good start, and unfortunately for the Seahawks, it was just too large of a mountain to climb.
Yeah. I think I could go on about this game more than I will. It was just it was tough. I mean, first off, the Carolina Panthers, they break open the game with a huge run. I wish I don't have the exact yardage on it, but Jonathan Stewart broke a big play on us, and Seattle's defense has been very has been very adamant about not allowing big plays the entire season. We let one up right there very early in the game on the first possession. They score eventually on a Jonathan Stewart 4-yard run. And then I think the defining play of the game, even though it was only 4 minutes in, was a Russell Wilson interception that got returned for a touchdown. Luke Kuechly, 14 yards only, had to return it. That pushed the game to 14-0. And it reminded me of the game Seattle had against the Rams in Seattle, actually. I believe the Rams scored on their first possession, and then they returned a fumble for a touchdown. And it kind of seemed like it just put us in this hole. And Seattle's offense has been great down the stretch, but we've always been known for more for our defense and our offense. And our offense just kind of does what it has to do, and we don't usually put up big points. And being down 14-0 after 4 minutes of a game puts you in a pretty big hole. And our offense wasn't able to get going. And I told you this, I believe, I was talking to you about this before the game, like the day before, and I said, if our offense doesn't get going right away, it could get ugly. It could turn into a blowout. And I said, if our offensive line doesn't get going and play a good game, this could get ugly. Well, what happened, I mean, we don't score in the first half. Our offensive line did not play well. They did not protect Russell Wilson, who is very much the best player on that offense. We couldn't get on the board, and I love our defense. They weren't able to come up with huge stops. It doesn't help that they were constantly out there because of our offense. Keep in mind, I believe we had, up until the end of the first half, our last possession, I believe we had 17 yards total. I mean, that's unbelievable. That is actually hard to fathom in an NFL game that they put up that few yards. Basically what happened, Jonathan Stewart, 1-yard run, 21-0. Graham Gano puts a field goal through. And then really the dagger of the game, a 19-yard pass to Greg Olsen from Cam Newton with 6:26 left in the second quarter. It's 31-0. At that point, I think I had realized our fate no matter what we did. Man, second half rolls around. Seattle puts up an effort, comes up with actually 3 touchdowns and a field goal, but couldn't get the onside kick. Just wasn't. I mean, Tanner, a team cannot come back from 31-0 in a half. It's been done. I'm sure it's been done before, but especially in this day and age with the Panthers' defense, not going to happen.
Yeah, well, and nobody knows better than BYU football fans. If you remember back to the Las Vegas Bowl where BYU was playing Utah. I mean, granted, this is college, but it's still football. And BYU was down 35-0 at the end of the first half, I believe. And they came back in the second half and they scored 28 straight points, but that one touchdown eluded them. So nearly identical to the Seahawks-Panthers game. Really, really identical. That BYU-Utah game, very similar, where Tanner Mangum, the BYU quarterback, was throwing, interceptions and pick sixes. Russell Wilson, unfortunately, had one at least.
Yeah,
right?
he had the one pick six, and then he threw a second interception that actually led to a field goal.
Right. So it's very similar to the BYU-Utah game, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's that 31-point mark that it just becomes too much of a challenge. But the Panthers in the second half, I don't know if they became complacent or if they were just, obviously they were outplayed by the Seahawks in the second half, but I don't know if that was just from them being too, like I said, complacent with their lead. Certainly if that was the case, that's got to be a habit that they break out of. But yeah, unfortunate for Seattle not to get off to a good start in that game.
Yeah, just killed us. I don't know how to put it any other way. If you give up 31 and you don't score a point, you pretty much dug your own grave for that game.
Right.
Tough one. It sets up a great matchup. I'm very much looking forward to watching that Arizona-Carolina game. But
yeah, that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
So
we'll leave that one. It was an unfortunate game. Ended up being an okay game, actually, to watch after the first half, but
right.
Too tough to come back.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yep. It's Cam Newton and the Panthers. They're moving on. Yeah, like you said, that's going to be a great game. Really looking forward to that. So then, excuse me, the last game of the day on Sunday was the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos. I don't know. This game had potential coming into it to be a decent game. But then again, on the other hand, it might not have, because I think Pittsburgh, coming in with some injuries to Antonio Brown, obviously they looked like they were, not going to have a very good game, looked a bit depleted, and I think initially people thought that the Broncos were going to be able to come out and, win the game soundly, but that didn't happen, and it was, fair to say it was a defensive struggle. Peyton Manning, he definitely, I don't know about you, Garrett, but he looks, I don't know if it's because he's not 100% health-wise, or if it's just the fact that, these are his waning years of his career, but he didn't look extremely sharp to me in that game.
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors there. I think maybe a little bit of rust, coming back, starting finally again. Mostly though, it's that age. He's been around so long. He's thrown so many pass attempts. I think it's getting to him, and I think he knows that. He's a great quarterback. He's one of the greatest of all time, but it's it hasn't been there this season, and it wasn't fully there against Pittsburgh.
Right.
But I was gonna, at the same time, I guess he could make the argument that he did enough. Now, I think the MVP of this game is Brandon McManus, making 5 field goals and basically giving.
Yep. It was crazy windy too.
Yeah,
wasn't
it was incredible. Which is amazing because he made all 5 of his field goal attempts, and then Chris Boswell makes all 3 of his, which is quite a feat. I guess it's Denver. It's thin air. It's easier to make them, but not when there's wind.
Right. So the final score of that game ended up being 23-16. The Broncos won it. They ended up scoring a crucial 11 points in the fourth quarter to seal that victory. So they're moving on, but fair to say they're going to have to rehaul. I don't think that's the right word. They're going to have to revolutionize, maybe? Maybe that's the right word.
It's a big word.
They're basically going to have to play much better. Yeah, thanks. They're going to have to play much better than they did against the Steelers if they're going to beat Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. So that was the divisional rounds. We'll jump ahead now into the conference championships. 2 games, man. 2 games left in the... Well, there's 3 games left, but... or I guess if you count the Pro Bowl, there's 4 games left, but nobody counts the Pro Bowl. So the first game of the conference championships will be Sunday, this coming Sunday. 3 o'clock, it will be the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots in good old Denver, Colorado. I don't know if it's going to be crazy windy again, but, I don't know. as long as it doesn't snow. Although New England's used to snow, so the weather shouldn't really be a factor. But this could. It's tough to say what this game is going to end up being like because the Patriots looked good. I think it'll, the fact that Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski got that game against the Chiefs under their belts, that they could come out and be really prepared to play against the Broncos. Also keep in mind that the Broncos didn't play very well against the Steelers, didn't play very well, they got the job done, but they weren't spectacular. Both teams have the same record coming in. Could go either way. Do you have anything on this game, Garrett?
I'm excited for it. It'll be a good game. Matchup between, two of the greatest. I think it's going to come down really more to Denver's defense and how they're able to limit the Patriots' offense. Because I think if the Denver defense can really step up and give Tom Brady a hard time and limit the points scored and just give Peyton and that offense a chance, because we've seen what that offense can do in the past. It's definitely there. But,
yes.
Yeah, so if that defense can lead and stop Tom Brady at least enough to give Denver a chance, I think that this could be a really good game. But if Denver's defense isn't there, man, I think that really kills their chances.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be key for their defense. As much time as they can, if they can keep Tom Brady and the offense off the field and give Peyton Manning as much chances as he needs, that could be their way into the Super Bowl. But that'll be a good game. I don't know. Do you have a prediction for that one? Let's just go prediction, just the team. We won't worry about the score. I'm saying Patriots.
Yeah, I think Patriots definitely, for sure.
Yeah, as much as it hurts to say. Personally, from a personal note, I will be cheering for the Broncos. So then we have just had to insert that. The final game is the NFC Conference Championship. By far, in my opinion, the best game of the day, the best game of the year. Of course, besides the Super Bowl. The Cardinals and the Panthers. I can't wait for this game. It's going to be in Charlotte. There's so many aspects to this game. The Cardinals, the Panthers started really hot against Seattle. Obviously, we just talked about that. Then they struggled in the second half. Again, not really sure if that's due to just complacency or who knows. But the Cardinals, had to take it to overtime against the Packers. You look at the game that they played against the Packers where they defeated them, pretty soundly. So, I don't know. An overtime win does a lot for teams' confidence, but do you have any? What are your thoughts on this game, Garrett?
It'll be interesting to see the Carolina defense against the Arizona offense, because I think the Arizona offense is one of the better in the league. They have 3 solid receiving options, I think. Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, and then John Brown. David Johnson has come in and done a spectacular job, and Carson Palmer having a great season, uncharacteristic for his age. I think that'll be the biggest battle is the Carolina defense versus Arizona's offense. And then I think it comes down to how Cam Newton plays. If he plays like he did in the first half against Seattle, they could run away with this game. If he plays like he did in the second half, I think this might be Arizona's game to steal and move on. Personally, if it comes down to a prediction, I'm taking Arizona in this game. I think they're just going to have a slight edge. I think their offense might be just too much. And I think Arizona has played bigger games against bigger teams. They had a game against Cincinnati. They had 2 against Seattle. They had a couple games against the Rams, who have been like giant killers for the past couple of years. I think they just have the experience. And then they faced adversity against the Packers. They had to come back after Green Bay hit a Hail Mary, which has got to be demoralizing for a team. But they were able to recover, come back, and win that game at overtime. I think they're definitely riding the momentum. If you want to look at it at how they finished their games, Carolina didn't finish their game very well. and Arizona was able to recover and win that game and end on a high note. Home field advantage might help Carolina a little bit, but I'm going to pick the Cardinals in this game.
All right. I'm going to go with the Panthers because what I can see is the Cardinals coming out and having a tough time in the beginning, like the Seahawks did, a tough time in the beginning against the Panthers defense. Unless the Cardinals can break free in the opening, half and put some serious points on the board, not some serious points on the board, just putting points on the board, if they can keep it even, I think that Cam Newton can really expose the Cardinals defense because of his dual threat nature, I just think, the Packers weren't able to get a solid running game going, minus the Eddie Lacy big, Tonka truck run that he had. The Cam Newton and the Panthers, with Jonathan Stewart, they're going to give Arizona a tougher time, I think, on the ground game, which should open up the defense, that Arizona defense, a little bit more. So I don't know. I can see the Arizona defense having a tougher time against Cam Newton and that offense than they did against Green Bay. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes, but I'm going to go with the Patriots versus the Panthers in the Super Bowl. Garrett is going with the Cardinals and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So really looking forward to those matchups. Should be a fun,
one quick note.
Enjoyable
One
Sunday.
quick note I just want to throw in against or with the Arizona game. I think on the Arizona defense, the absence of Tyrann Mathieu is going to hurt against Ted Ginn Jr. because Patrick Peterson's a great player, but I think most people would agree that Tyrann Mathieu is the better athlete and would have been able to give Ted Ginn Jr. shut him down, give him a harder time than Patrick Peterson will. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the game. I just figured I'd throw it in since people have been talking about the absence of Tyrann Mathieu in that defense.
Right, yeah, that's a good point to make. And Peterson was, he basically had a shutdown game against the Packers. He didn't really have to do anything because the Packers never threw to whoever he was covering. So I think that's about it for the NFL as far as the conference championship goes. One little note here, Garrett. I just want to discuss this while we're talking about NFL news. Before we go into a little conversation about Tom Brady, there's a report that's coming out about how the NFL has committed to the city of London, England, that they will bring a franchise there in the next 6 years. This, the report is shaky. There's a couple people that are saying now that's not true, that the NFL never said that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on a franchise in London?
I think for the people over in London, it might be great, but man, if I were NFL owners and I had any say in this, I immediately would have to shut this down. If you think about any team in general, but especially any West Coast team, they come off a game on Sunday, especially if it's a road game, but if it's a home game, they come off a game on Sunday, they're tired, they're worn out, body's hurting from this game. You figure that they have to get over to London, leaving on Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, which would seem at the latest. They got to go cross country. You figure, we'll say San Diego, for example. Say the Chargers are going over to London to play whatever team's there. You figure they're either going to take the route across the U.S. to somewhere like New York, and then they have to make that final stretch to London. That's about 12 or 13 hours of flying right there. I guess you could go the other way. I don't know if it'd be any quicker. I doubt it. You got to cross the whole Pacific.
Yeah, I don't think so. Right.
And then they got to adjust to the time and show up and play a full NFL game. And let alone if there's a team in London, if they stay consistent with the fact that you play 8 games at home and 8 games away, that London team is making that trip 8 times. Logistically, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but this seems like an easy decision for the NFL and the owners.
I agree with you on all the points that you made. Unless they come out with in the next 6 years with a supersonic plane, that cuts the travel distance
Hey,
in half.
I've heard about a group that's trying to bring the Concorde back. So maybe if the
that's right.
NFL teams want to pitch into that fund, they could,
Exactly. Hey, there's plenty of money floating around in those NFL owner groups, So, anyways, that's news. We'll see if that report is confirmed by the NFL. Obviously, it's still kind of shaky. Nobody really knows if it's true or not. So, as we're kind of winding down here in this episode of the podcast, I want to talk about, because there has been all this talk with Tom Brady winning and going to his 5th straight conference championship. Everybody's talking about how Tom Brady is the best quarterback to play the game. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I'm pretty sure Garrett is on the same page. Okay, we're going to talk about this. I just want to take it from a fan's perspective, from just watching the game. A fan watching the game, watching Tom Brady play in the game. Just take the example of when they played the Chiefs this past week. Yes, he was out there and he's making consistent throws, right? He's on target. He makes throws. But I just don't... People who are saying he's the best quarterback ever, he's not... He wasn't, moving around the pocket a lot. He's not creating opportunities. He's got a fantastic offensive line who's holding him in there in the pocket. All he has to do is step up. And then he's got an open receiver down the field, 6, 10, 12 yards down the field. And it's, a 6, 10, 12-yard gain constantly. Yes, that's good play calling from his coach, Bill Belichick, who he's been, fortunate to have. And, it's just these consistent things. I don't see him moving around the pocket like Cam Newton, like Aaron Rodgers, like Russell Wilson. I don't... That's my, from the surface fan point of view. I mean, we can get into the stats here in a second, but Garrett, do you have anything off the top here?
Off the top, I would say I think it's hard to judge right now when he's come out and said that he wants to play 10 more years. I don't know, it probably won't happen, but it's Tom Brady, who knows. I think it's hard to judge a quarterback's career right now when they're still playing. If you look at, this is a weird comparison, but a lot of people can't make a final judgment on how a president's term was, how their presidency went until 10, 20 years after they've been out of office, because sometimes you just have to take that time, give it time, and then look back on their whole career, and it's a little easier to judge them when you can look at that whole career as one and be able to say, okay, this was the guy who's the greatest. Look at his career, here at a full perspective. He was the best one. He had the greatest career. It's just hard for me to give someone credit as the greatest when they're still playing the game. It's hard to name a greatest in general because there's been so many greats. People saying that he's the greatest right now, I think is unfair. Maybe for different reasons than you. I think definitely the stats, I believe you have some, will show it too. But
yeah.
For me right now, I would never name someone who's playing right now the best that there is, or the best that there was ever.
Yeah. My only slightest disagreement to that statement would be Peyton Manning. The fact that Peyton Manning is still playing, and, again, look at the stats. When we're talking about career stats here and NFL records, Peyton Manning he's the highest passing, most passing yards in his career, right? So, it's tough to say with Peyton Manning still playing the game whether he is the best quarterback to ever play the game. Most everybody that you talk to that doesn't say Tom Brady is going to be saying Joe Montana. Now, unfortunate, Garrett and I weren't necessarily around to see Joe Montana play, but his numbers obviously prove that he still is the greatest to play until Tom Brady retires. But like Garrett was saying, you take a look at the stats here, and I mean, Tom Brady just, I don't see, if you're looking at it on a statistic point of view, Tom Brady had that one season in 2007. The only, the big record that he holds is most touchdown passes in a single season, and that was in 2007 when he set the record for 50 touchdown passes in the season. And mind you, that's only one more than Peyton Manning when he was with the Colts in 2004. So, and you know, you just take a look at the list of the different records that are held, different statistics that are held. Tom Brady really doesn't appear on most of these things, and the appearances that he does make are about season appearances. You know, most yards gained in a season, most touchdowns thrown in a season, and it all goes back to that 2007 season. So, like Garrett was saying, you can't really say that he's the greatest quarterback ever, especially while his career is, you know, still ongoing. So, that's just me. That's just me personally. I don't think that he's the best quarterback in the game. But do you have any final words on that one, Garrett?
Just, quick thing. As you know, they've created a stat, total QBR. I think ESPN came up with this. I'm not positive. Total QBR, it's supposed to give you the best rate, like the most accurate rating as to who has been the best quarterback in the season, in the game, all of that. They rank them every week, who had the best week as, you know, per total QBR. And if you look at the list of the all-time best seasons, total QBR. Now this is going to leave out all of the greats that played before this stat, but currently, if you want to talk about current quarterbacks, and it comes up, you know, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are usually the two that come up most often that are currently playing. In terms of all-time best seasons for total QBR, number 1, Aaron Rodgers in 2011. Number 2 is Peyton Manning. Number 3, Tom Brady in 2007. And then Tom Brady doesn't appear again until 13. Now, we had Tom Brady at 2, Tom Brady at 6, Tom Brady at 8, 9, and 10. So he's got 5 in the top 10. Carson Palmer, Tony Romo, and Drew Brees had the other ones, other than those that I've listed. So if you want to go off of that, it's clear. It's clear that Peyton Manning is the better of those two. He's higher up than him at 2 with Tom Brady at 3. And then Peyton Manning appears, 4 more times in the top 10. So if you want to look at this stat that is supposed to give you a rating of who's the best quarterback in each week, each game, each season, then it's, undoubtedly Peyton Manning. But that's just my last word. If you want to look at the stats, if you're a stat person and you believe in total QBR, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
So, well, with that, what a way to end the episode. Well, yeah, so that's our conclusion. That's our argument. Come at us if you disagree. We'd love to take you on. So this was probably the final. This was a long episode. This was probably the final episode of the football edition of the B&O Sports Show. Seeing that football season is just about to come to an end after these conference championships. Heck, we might spend a whole episode next week talking about conference championships. Who knows? But so we'll be jumping into some other sports in the following episodes here coming up. Probably some basketball, probably some hockey. So before we end, just got to throw in the hockey shout out. Garrett and I, both from Chicago, both big Blackhawks fans. The Chicago Blackhawks set a franchise record 12 wins in a row last night. Unbelievable accomplishment. Unbelievable accomplishment for the Blackhawks. Such a great organization. I'm so glad that we're from Chicago and we're true Hawks fans, so that, all those people who claim that Hawks fans are just bandwagons, we don't fit into that mold. So watch out for the Hawks. I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but when they won the Stanley Cup last year, they had gone on a 11-game win streak in the regular season.
Hey.
So watch out.
It could
Watch
happen.
out. Lord Stanley might be coming back home for the second year in a row. Yeah, so really good time to be a Hawks fan. And again, like I said, we'll get into the NHL. We'll get into the NBA next time around. All right, I think that concludes this episode of the B&O Sports Show. Garrett, any last words?
Make sure you tune in to the conference championship games this week. They're going to be great. It's going to set up a great Super Bowl. Very excited.
Yes. Keep an eye on those games. Keep an eye on those Blackhawks. And if I'm not mistaken, the Spurs and Warriors will be playing, I think, Monday night.
That's one heck of a game right there.
I believe that's true. I should have checked, but I believe that's true. So that'll be a heck of a game. Keep an eye on that one. We'll be talking about that most likely.
Spurs Warriors
when we
on
come
the
back.
25th.
Yes. Okay. Good. I can't wait for that. That's going to be awesome. All right. That'll do it from us. This has been the B&O Sports Show. We hope you have enjoyed. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. We would love that. Again, we hope you have enjoyed. Thanks for listening, and we will see you later.